Welcome to our 1999 HD. This is the 2017 update with some of the changes we made in the last few years. The original one was in 2013 when we first got the van, and it's been 4 years, so I thought I'd show you some things we've learned and some of the updates we made. Heading over to the front, each video I talk about, everybody has this problem. Power mirrors stop working, so make sure you spray deox around here. Otherwise, in the door jamb, you probably have broken wires. So you have to take a look at that and see what the problem is. But this is where I would start. Just spray deox around the buttons and around this disc. And work it for a while, and it hopefully will work for you. And now we have 55,000 miles. And so we've done about 20,000 miles. On the scan gauge, we sent it into Linear Logic. They have new programming. And you can see it's 4.22R. It's just for the Rialta. It's a free update, so you can just go to Linear Logic and make arrangements to have it sent in. They even pay the postage back. And since it's a lightweight thing, it doesn't cost too much to send it in. So it's definitely a worthwhile upgrade. If you haven't got a scan gauge and you do buy one, you can always send it in and have the new programming done to it. And then one thing they mentioned on Dwayne's site, which is Rialta Info, is don't put a lot on your keys. Don't hang a lot of stuff here, because this ignition switch will wear out over time, and then cause you a non-starting problem. You may not be able to shift, get stuck in shift. The other reason you might get stuck in shift is underneath. I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but there's a switch under here on the top of the brake. And that is the other common fault point. So it's a good idea to carry an extra ignition switch and extra brake switch. They're not expensive, and you can change them out on the road. We had a problem where we get stuck in park. Turned out to be shorted out wires on the trailer hitch. So, and it would blow the fuse occasionally. So I finally figured that out, and we haven't had the problem since. The other thing I mentioned earlier, which I'll mention one more time, is the cruise control is under here. Module. If your cruise control stops working, that's the most likely thing to be a problem. There could be other problems. Is that on the Rialta Info site, there's also a diagnostic sheet where you can kind of test each part of the cruise control. You know, if you do disconnect that cruise control, that wire will actually, when you disconnect, it will drop down below the dash, and you can test each thing with a multimeter there. So we didn't make any updates to the front of the vehicle other than those little things. I have the same radio that I had in the last video, and there's a whole lot to do up here. Okay, one thing I did do, the kitchen's about the same. And we haven't really done anything on this side that I can remember anyway. And on this side, we replaced that cabinet face. And we had to replace these earlier. And just to show you, this is the magazine rack. You can always put a door in there and a little shelf. It gives you a lot more useful storage than the magazine rack. And I talked about the roller pins in here in the last video, the 2015 video, so you can take a look at that if you want to learn how to, if those pins fall out and how to fix it. Okay, the other thing we had done is we replaced all our blinds. These are the ones from United Shade, and we ordered them through Steve's Blinds. They're 5/8 inch, and they're back, so they're blackout. Now, if you don't get the back one, they're called room darkening, and light will come through. If you want blackout, you have to get the lining. The disadvantage of the lining is that when you bring them up, they'll barely make it underneath the trim. They won't fit tight under there. Oops, sorry, tight under there. So what you want to do, if you don't get the backing, then they will. The backing makes it twice as thick. These aren't as nice as the original, but they work. And ours were wrinkled, so they weren't looking very nice. And they pull down okay. They're not as nice as the originals, but they look better now because they're fresh. Okay, and up top here, we had a different covering for here. This is to kind of block the skylight light and save some heat when it gets cold. So we made this lightweight one, and you just put Velcro ends here, and that sticks to the top. And that'll hold that up. You can adjust them so it's flat. So when it's really sunny, you want to keep it cooler, or when it's really cold and you want to keep it warmer, it helps, gives you a little more insulation in there. So it's easy to, my wife just, basically it's just a piece of reflective material and then just stitched along the edge. Now, it makes the number one problem with these Rialtas is the skylight leaks. So I talked about that in the first video. We had replaced our skylight and got the new corner brackets, and we haven't had any leaks since. So highly recommend. I recommend replacing the outer skylight, because if there's already cracks in it, it's just going to give you problems in the future. They're available from Winnebago, and they're about $300-something delivered. Now, another addition we made is no more yellow fan. So what I had done here is I put a skylight in here, took out the air conditioner. We're in the Northwest, so we never really need the air conditioner. Never used it, and I was banging my head on it. So we decided to take it out, and if we're ever in a climate where we need it, we can always put in a more powerful unit, like the 11,000 BTU unit instead of the 7,500, so it actually cooled the thing. I tried using it once when it was hot, and with hot dry air it just doesn't do a whole lot. So we wanted just a skylight here. The wiring I just left wrapped around the edge under the frame, so it can be easy. But this way we can see the sky, which is kind of nice, and it'll give more airflow. So that's what we did. And again, we made the cover. My wife made the cover, and so we can cover that up. But I bought a clamp-on fan here, so I didn't have to drill holes in the roof. But I didn't need the fan. But it's the same fan as here. So I took out the yellow one, the old motor, and I put in the new one. And now I have a nice-looking fan instead of that old yellowed-out thing. And I had to do a little rewiring because the wiring wasn't exactly the same, but it all works. You can see it spins around fine. And so I did that. And the other thing I did was I painted this skylight because it's kind of yellowed, and I haven't replaced the cover, but I painted it so it's whiter. Okay, now the next thing we did was the door got painted. I talked about that last time. We can't rotate the video, I guess. And it was yellowed out, so it didn't look very good. When I chose to paint it, I didn't really choose the correct color. It's a winter gray. It's a little more bluer. I kind of like it, but if I have to paint it again or want to paint it again, I'll try to find a lighter gray that'll match the trim a little bit better. But it looks nice. Now inside the bathroom, one thing we did to fix it, I recently just redid all the seals on the toilet. It's about a 4-hour job. The main problem was this flap where the water is down below was leaking and draining down, which is kind of a common problem. So that gasket there was all dried out. So I replaced that gasket. I replaced it with a gasket kit you can get for toilets for the Starlight. This is a Aqua Magic Starlight. I wanted to keep the original toilet because it's low, and they don't really make a low one, and low works better in this setup. Other people just replace the whole toilet, but now it's all super clean in there because when I took it out I was able to clean it. To get this toilet off, if you ever have to do it, I don't know if there's enough light, but there's a bolt back here, and then there's one under this cap, and you need a swivel to get that bolt because it's offset, so you can't get a ratchet directly on it. It's offset, so you need one of those swivels. So once you get that, you can get it. Doesn't take too long. The other thing that was done, which Dwayne suggested on the Rialta page, which I never knew, was this sink. I tried using this sink once. I'm going to try to show you here, but it may not come out. But there's a seal here. And the purpose of that seal is when you flip the water on the sink, it won't drain all through down here in front and across. So what happens is, move this away. I don't know if we'll be able to get in here and see anything, but there's a flap here. No, you won't be able to see it, but it's along this edge, and the tape that holds it in place dries out and comes apart. So then when this sink's full of water and you flip it up to do the drain, the water won't actually get in here. It'll just drain all over the place. So, and it'll run down. So take a look. If you have a Rialta, take a look, make sure this seal, you can feel it back here, is there. You can remove the sink easy enough, so it makes it easy to get at. Okay, and I think I also painted these, all the lights, including this one. Maybe this one wasn't painted, I can't remember, but they're all yellowed out. So those were done. I painted this thing because it was yellow. Down here, I replaced these propane detectors are only good for 5 years supposedly, and the new ones are only 5 years. I went with a kind of an original. They make one that fits in there, the original hole. So I put that in, and that way our propane detector, it kind of worked when we originally got it, but when I retested it this year, it wasn't working. And just to show you, if you hadn't seen one of the other videos, this we put in for storage. And a lot of people do that for two reasons. One for storage and one for safety. Because without it, if you're walking across, if I put my foot here, you could fall into this hole.